In this session, we are going to look into the Panorama management interface configuration. So the Panorama has a management interface or a dedicated management interface, and that is named as MGT, and it is used for the management of the Panorama. So the admin can use the CLI SSH method or the web-based HTTPS method to access the Panorama via this management interface. And this management interface uses the control plane, CPU, and the RAM memory. So when the admin uses the Panorama for the policy configuration, routing, monitoring of the firewalls or monitoring the logs, the VPN settings, all those settings are configured via the management interface. So the admin will connect to the Panorama via the management interface, and then via this management interface, the configs will be pushed to the firewalls. So the admin access via the CLI and web-based GUI like SSH via PuTTY, HTTPS browser, or like HTTPS using web browsers. API is also supported on the management interface, and then the Panorama can have multiple separate interfaces as well, which can be used for the management purpose as well. Every Panorama appliance has an initial set of credentials which can be used by the administrators to log into the Panorama appliance. So those are the default username and password, and these can be used to log into the Panorama via the management interface or via the console port as well. So the management interface for the hardware appliances, or in case you have a virtual appliance as well for the Panorama. So like on a hypervisor, let's say on VMware hypervisor. So that's the host, and on top of that VMware, you install the Panorama guest OS or the guest VM. So once this guest VM will be ready and installed, then the admin can use this default username password, and the default credentials are admin. So the username is admin and the password is also admin. Now these Panorama appliances has a default IP 192.168.1.1 that is assigned to the management interface. So the admin can access the Panorama using the management interface using SSH PuTTY if the admin machine has a IP from this 192.168.1.x network. So if the IP is from the same subnet, then the admin can use SSH or PuTTY or the web-based access directly. And for security reasons, the default credentials should be changed, and Panorama has made it mandatory that whenever the admin will log in to the Panorama appliance the first time, the default credentials needs to be changed. So PaloAlto has introduced this feature as a must to change the password. So now we will log into our lab, the Panorama appliance, via the console port. So we have a virtual appliance, virtual Panorama, and then we are connecting to it via the console application, and then we will change the default credentials, and then we will change the default IP address of the management interface. So this is our lab Panorama server. This is a virtual appliance, and let's log into this using the default credentials, admin username and admin password. So we can see we are now into the prompt to change the password. So first we need to confirm the old password, that is admin. Now I need to enter a new password and reconfirm it. and our password is changed. So we can go to the configuration mode and then we can commit the changes so that this running configuration is saved. So when we changed this password via this prompt, this was the candidate configuration, and with this commit we are making the changes, like forcing the changes from the candidate config to the running config, or like committing the changes. So this is done. Then we can change the interface IP as well, the management interface IP. So to change the management interface, we need to go to the configuration mode, which we are already in the configuration mode. And by default, the interface might be set to use the IP via DHCP. So we can execute a command, set device config system type static. After that is done, then the Panorama will take the static IP. Otherwise, if this is set as type dynamic, and if we are configuring a static IP, then it won't take effect. So this command is very important. Set device config system type static. So let's execute it. We are into the configuration mode, and there are two modes. First one is the exec and then the configuration mode. So we can see this greater than sign, then the hash, and set device config system type and static. Then we can run another command to set the IP address. So that command is set device config system IP address. So when we say system IP, that refers to the management interface IP address. Then the net mask, default gateway, DNS settings, primary or secondary. So we don't need to define all these settings. Maybe we can use till this: set device config system IP address, net mask, and default gateway. These DNS setting servers, or like DNS settings, can be defined at a later point of time. So we will go to execute this command now: set device config system IP address. So set device config system IP address. Let's use this IP, and then net mask, and then the gateway, default gateway. And let's see this one, and then commit. So after this will be done, we will be able to take the SSH and the web-based access of our Panorama server. Currently I am taking this console via the VMware, or like via my virtual lab. So commit is done. So let's test the connectivity first using ping, then 10.2.2.9. So we can see from my machine the Panorama server is reachable. So now we will access the Panorama via the web browser. So I already have bookmarked it, so that's the IP and HTTPS. I'm getting a certificate warning. Click on advance and proceed. So now I can log into the Panorama using the new password. There are no device groups, so this is just some initial warning. And close. Remind me later. Okay. So if this Panorama will have the access to the internet, it will try to retrieve the license automatically. But if it will fail, or like the internet connectivity is not there and Panorama appliance is not able to connect to the Panorama cloud to fetch the license automatically, then it will give the option to complete manually. So using this manually, we will need or like to license the Panorama offline, or like using the manual option, we will need these two key values. First one, this UUID, or this is a universal identifier, and then the CPU ID. This is specific to the virtual appliances. So we can download this file and upload to the PaloAlto support portal to get the license files. Or we can enter these values manually, and we will see this in some more detail at a later point of time. So this is the Panorama console, or like the web console. And we can see 4 tabs by default. The dashboard, which contains the general information like the device name, it is Panorama, the IP address, the management network, the gateway. The serial number is currently unknown because this is not licensed as of now. Then the system mode, and then the utilization about the system resources like the management. Currently it doesn't have any managed devices, and then some information about the logged admins, like if there are multiple admins, then the logged in admins currently, some data logs, and then the system logs, like this user logged in via the web browser using HTTPS at this point of time, the user admin was authenticated, then some config logs, ACC risk factor logs, and then the ACC tab, which we will talk at a later point of time, and then the monitor tab, under which the logs from different firewalls will be visible, and then the main tab is this Panorama. So under this Panorama tab, all the settings related to the Panorama and the updates or the license for those firewalls which will be managed via this Panorama will be controlled via this tab Panorama. Then we have this commit tab here, so we can commit to the Panorama or push the configs to the firewall devices. We have some options to take lock as well, so that other admins can't make any changes, and we can revert the changes, or like we have the option to save the configs as well. So this was it about the initial setup, like the first time access wizard to change the password and the IP address.